underwear. This is like, I have to put my computer down. It's actually so horrifying. Okay, he gave me, because he was like, whatever, he's just like, I have a daughter and this is like for women, so I'll just give her this thing. And it was a thong underwear. Bear with me, I promise this is funny and not terrifying. Thong underwear, cat ears on the top of the thong. Okay, and I kid you not, I honestly can't even look at you. On the front, it said, "Nice kitty." My dad was just like, "You love cats." So that's just an example of Mark Lee charm. Also, I wasn't going to tell you this, but I will. Okay, this is a much longer story. I'm going to make it really truncated. But basically, I ended up in a Girls Gone Wild infomercial. And I want to be clear, I didn't do anything scandalous at all. I was at spring break, someone filmed me and my friend illegally. We were just like dancing, fully clothed, just to put it out there. And we ended up on the infomercial illegally. And I was so horrified. Friends of mine were starting to see it. And I was like, oh my God, I have to tell my parents because this thing is airing all the time. This is in college, I was a sophomore in college. And I told my dad, I was like, I'm so sorry, this is like such a disgrace on our family, but I ended up in this video, and it's just me and my friend Laura, and nothing weird happens, we're just dancing, but we are like affiliated now with Girls Gone Wild, which is really horrifying. And my dad just goes, well, Jamie, you're a movie star. So anyways, oh my God, it feels so good to talk about that. A real stain on my record. My dad, as people have talked about this tonight, my dad was an avid reader, like a true academic, and I can barely finish 2 pages of a book before being like, I wonder what's transpired on Instagram in the last 5 minutes. But knowing that I'm part Mark Lee makes me feel smart in moments I feel very insecure. Because if I am half as smart as him, I'm doing okay. He also made things feel important, even if they weren't. Like, when he described to me what the alien from Alien, the movie, looked like because I wasn't allowed to see the movie, I hung on his every word. He always spoke with purpose, even about slimy space critters. But my dad wasn't just smart, he was actually a thinker. He wasn't afraid of his own mind or anybody else's. The dark thoughts, the weird thoughts, he celebrated differences. He celebrated mundane activities like driving me to the mall or driving me to a friend's house. He was a celebrator. I don't know if that's a word, but it should be. He was always game to do stuff. I would come home from New York, and he would be like, let's go to Mariano's. And when we got there, he was like, let's get margaritas. He was just fun. He was never heavy. He was never moody. He was consistently just cool as a cucumber, happy to be around me and my mom. He also pronounced fajitas frajitas, even though there's blatantly no R in the word, and I corrected him 1,000,000 times, and he didn't mispronounce any other words. It wasn't like he was like, Jarmy, I love you, you know? Just fajitas. He also rode every roller coaster with me at theme parks while my mom held the bags and waited for us. He was just friggin' game. He was game for experiences and being present and living life. And also, it has been talked about, but like, my dad was so proud of me. Like, that feels like a brag to just say, but I know tonight isn't about me, but just watching someone be that psyched for another individual to track everything they're doing like it's their own, I don't know that I've known love on that level, but it was really cool to witness my dad show that kind of support, because it taught me that love can be that deep, that bottomless, to where you've merged your own existence with another person's. Their wins and losses are your wins and losses. It gives me hope to know that it is possible, and I would not have known that if I didn't see it demonstrated by my dad. Fuck. Thanks. Yeah. One sort of bizarre upside to death is that the person can no longer be contained by the limitations of the mortal world, and in some ways I think my dad always existed in a different realm. Due to hearing loss, sometimes I felt like he went inside himself. Other times, I felt like he was such a good listener and had so many thoughts and opinions. He just decided to keep them to himself because he had that kind of confidence where he didn't need to talk a million miles an hour to prove his worth and his intellect. He could just be with you. He was happy noshing on some tortilla chips while I would go into some long-winded, only child diatribe feeling like the most interesting person on the planet. Which is so silly because I couldn't hold a candle to my dad in that department. Mark Lee was the most interesting. He really filled out that word. He could recite every fact about every era of history effortlessly. We would go to a museum and he would want to look at like bowls made by ancient civilizations, and I would be like, okay, cool, when's the gift shop? If we went to a museum as a family and got separated somewhere in the exhibit, my dad was always the last to finish. We would be waiting on him because he read every plaque on the wall, he soaked up every painting or sculpture or whatever it was we went to see. He took everything in, constantly making space in his brain for new information. He didn't just look and appreciate, he would internalize the art. It left with him that day. It's strange how when someone dies, you almost get to know them more than when they were here. We go through life assuming everyone will be here forever, that we will be here forever, but situations like this remind us that that is just not true. And I don't see my dad as having passed on or any other euphemisms we're supposed to find comforting, because my dad never had an end to him. He was infinite in his way of thinking and loving and embracing, and taught me to be infinite as well. So I see tonight as a celebration of a person who evolved past the confines of Earth. Mark Lee not being here is proof of self-evolution. The world he has crossed into is finally on his level of immeasurable possibility. It's dark and light and nothing and something all at once. It's everything. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see anybody else in line, so before we wrap this up, I'm going to call on just a couple of people. You're probably not ready, but Danny Eaton, I would like to talk. Y'all, Danny Eaton and Mark, they taught me the music business. They taught me how to do promotions, and one of the reasons I'm here at the Kessler now. So I'm so glad he's here, and give it up for Danny Eaton.
Woo!
Danny, go on up.
Yeah, go.
These are pretty hard acts to follow here. But I got to tell you, Mark and I met in probably 66 or 67, right in there. And he was managing Kenny. He had another band at the time called Blues Bag. And he goes, I really don't have time to do both these bands. Why don't you take this band? And so I took Blues Bag, which is Mark Benno and Wally Wilson, Gary Nicholson. And we went to California, made a record with Leon Russell, and turned the name into Le Cirque, and we had a little hit record and stuff. But all that really kind of happened, but then Mark and I came back together, and we did our first show together in 1968, called the Flower Fair, which was a teen fair at Market Hall. It was Spencer Davis, Mitch Ryder, Lennon Pipers, Neil Diamond, Jimmy Reed, and a host of other characters. Went on for a couple of days. Tickets were $1. And from there, we went on to do, I was thinking about this through all this, and I think Mark and Linda and I were partners for probably about 35 years. We did at least 6,000 shows. Which should tell you something about why Mark's a little hard of hearing. And why I say a lot. But through these 6,000 shows, and they were everywhere. I mean, you know, a lot of the shows we did were here in Dallas, and I know all you people, some of you people were at some of those shows and enjoyed them with us, because Mark and I were probably at most of them. But we did shows all over the place. I mean, we did a ton of shows all over Texas. We did Oklahoma, Arkansas frequently. Bands like the Eagles, we went all over the Deep South. Certain other bands, we actually did every major city in the country, including New York and LA and you name it. And there's a lot of work, really hard work involved in doing this stuff. And I gotta tell you, Mark Lee was about the hardest working man in show business. We logged a lot of rock and roll miles together. I mean, a ton. And you don't go through that and spend that much time with someone without getting to know them pretty well. And a few people have said Mark was a little mysterious, and he definitely was. And he just was a sponge of knowledge. I've never been around anybody that accumulated so much knowledge as Mark Lee. He was the one that came up with the, as far as I know, Linda may have had something to do with that, I don't know. But as far as I know, he was the one that came up with the 462. And people ask me all the time, what's that mean? And I tell them some story. Yeah, but what Mark told me was that somehow in some book, and I don't know the whole story here, he was reading in some numerology that this combination of numbers was the key to taking things that were in your mind, your dreams, your thoughts, and putting them into the real world. And I think he pretty much lived like that. You know, he had dreams and he made them happen, to his credit. And like I said, you sort of get to know somebody pretty well. And I know one of the things that Mark and I talked about a lot in all these number of shows we did together is the thing that was really important to him and to me was that we played a small part, because we weren't up on the stage. People weren't coming to see us. We were just facilitating the event. But the thing that was really important to both of us is that we could set a situation up where people could come into a venue and maybe they're all bummed out about this or that, or, you know, no telling what, on the edge of this or that. They could come in, see something, forget about themselves for a while, be entertained, and maybe leave in just a little bit better frame of mind than what they came in with. Maybe they learned something. And that was really, really important to Mark. And I got to say that this event is sort of a continuation of that to me, because what I've seen here, the great friends that I've seen here that I haven't seen in a while, Mark's family, this is going to help me get through the loss of this great man. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paula McElhaney, and I had the distinct honor of just starting out with 462 and Mark and Danny as a mentor. And Jamie, 38, what? I took Rachel and Jamie to to Six Flags. I would stay over at the Lee's house to chaperone, even though Jamie was so good, she didn't need it. But, you know, Mark and Danny both, but they made me who I am today. They're responsible for my career, my livelihood, my confidence, just learning everything there was about the music industry. And Danny, Linda, and Christy and I figured out a long time ago that 462 stood for when the stars are aligned with Uranus. So there's that. Anyway, I learned, they took a chance on a girl like me who was a lowly production assistant, runner, you know, young girl who hadn't a clue what well, I knew what I didn't want to do, but they showed me a direction and a path that I did want to do. And I am forever beholden and thankful. And Jamie and Linda and Mark and Danny and everybody, Rachel, they're all so much a part of my life that I will forever cherish those days. And the knowledge, the wealth of knowledge. You know, I never will forget that the time I learned that, you know, the show will always go on, and that when there's a will strong enough, you can pull off the inevitable, like having a stadium concert during a hurricane and having a Dallas Cowboys game the very next day. Try loading out a 3-week load-in overnight to prepare for a Dallas Cowboy game. We pulled off the impossible. There was greatness with 462. The team was dynamic. I loved everyone. Linda taught me so much. She taught me computer. She taught me everything. She was a friend and a mentor. And Jamie, I watched her grow up, and she's just become a beautiful young girl. And everything that made her that is Mark and Linda. And what everybody has said tonight, Mark is that person to the infinite power. He was a wealth of knowledge. He was a sponge for knowledge, and he was a consummate gentleman. So I hope everyone here remembers that about him and celebrates his life. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anton Schlesinger, and I wanted to get up here and say a few words, as I feel like I might represent a different era in Mark Lee's life and career. I was a manager for a band called Underage at the time, and I think it was probably called 1996 back then, and Mark Lee somehow found us, and I'm sitting here tonight realizing, you know, how that happened, and we were like maybe 14 years old, and it was like three or four of us at the time. We grew to 4. One of them is here is Brandon Castillo, and some of the others aren't here this evening, couldn't make it. But I remember, I was trying to remember how Mark Lee found us, and I remember one of my best friends was dating Jamie at the time, so that was a pretty good in to get to meet Mark Lee. But I'm also realizing he believed in us beyond that. You know, he really cared for us, and he really gave us hope that he believed that we could make it in the music industry, and he really was a mentor to us young boys, teaching us how to make it in this industry. And while I was the manager of the band, I was 14 at the time, so I was just mainly more like a roadie, so to speak, helping load in all the gear in and out. But Mark Lee made a lot of opportunities for us. He got us a lot of shows and really put us on, and really showed us the world. He got us shows all over town, from Galaxy Club, Orbit Room, T-Bomb Live. We got to open up for the likes of No Doubt, MXPX, Good Riddance, and a lot more in this era when punk rock was really blowing up in the 90s. But you know, as I sit here and I listen to everyone's stories, I realized how much of an impression Mark made on me, and he really was such a good person, and he really was such a good steward of the industry, and he believed in people, and he just did good. And you know, I realize now a lot. I do I run a lot of my life now. I'm still in the music industry here in Dallas, and I still get to do a lot of things, and I'm still trying to always uplift others. And I realized that Mark gave me that gift and passed it on to me, or at least brought it out of me. So I have him to thank for that. I'll always have fond memories of Mark, and I think he left a great legacy here, and I want to say that it's still continuing. The Dallas music scene is a great burgeoning place. There's great young talent coming out of Dallas, and there are people still that are out here that believe in that young talent, thanks to what Mark left behind. So thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm here to represent Lakeview Centennial High School. And I'm sorry, I did not prepare anything, and you would think as the high school principal, being able to speak in front of a group is easy, but it's not. Mark Lee was someone that we didn't know all of this. Some of us knew bits and pieces, but we did not know all the details, and we have enjoyed learning this and seeing him in a different light and hearing all the stories tonight. We got to experience this at a different time in his life. He made a tremendous impact on our students. As one of our spoke, and if you're on Twitter, many of our students have told about the impact he made, and he made an impact on our staff. He came to Lakeview 10 years ago, and I've known him all those 10 years. He was a kind and caring man, very quiet, but always greeted everyone. I got a hello, Miss Bailey, every morning, and I got a good evening or good afternoon, Miss Bailey, when he left. But he made a tremendous impact on our lives, and it's phenomenal to hear all of these stories and see all of this. And kind of a tidbit, I was a very young person when he was, I was in my early 20s when he was in his prime of the 90s of Arcadia and the Trees, and I'm sure I was at some of the concerts that he had promoted and signed those bands and brought those bands, and so it's been very eye-opening for me. My husband also played in the local Dallas music scene and thinks that he knew him then, but it's just been a tremendous time. Thank you for sharing these stories, and just know that as a teacher, he was phenomenal. There will never be another person to replace him. And thank you.
Okay, I'm wondering, is Clint Birdwell in the room? Clint, are you here? There he is. Clint's the guy in the middle there with that Charlie's Guitar Shop t-shirt on. Back in the day, Clint worked with Mark and Danny at 462. We did the Nirvana show at Trees. And maybe, I don't know if Clint wants to talk about that or not. Here he is, Clint Birdwell.
That's a lot to talk about.
Show of trees.
Well, I started out my professional career as a football coach and a teacher in Houston, Texas. My sister married a guy that grew up with Bill Ham in Waxahachie, so I kind of was in the ZZ Top family at the same time. I was living with Danny Eaton, who worked for Longwood Productions, and Jim Lander, who was their tour manager. And we were getting ready for the Worldwide Texas Tour in 1976. Well, Danny had a friend coming from Houston, kind of European looking guy, had a different haircut, different kind of dress, kind of shoes. Well, he was trying to get the photography gig for the tour. Well, he'd sleep on our couch while he was going to try to cut his deal. Well, I'd get up early the next morning, have to go to school. Mark would have taken a shower the night before. He never would turn the dang shower nozzle back to the bathtub. So I would get up and cold water would hit me in the head. And I said, Danny, you better tell that buddy of yours that you gotta straighten this out. Well, and then Mark did get the photography gig, and that was a successful tour all over the United States with Buffalo, Longhorn, Rattlesnakes, Javelina, you name it. And I was mainly doing security, but I did get to take the Longhorn up several times when all the Cowboys went back to Texas. But Danny talked me into getting out of coaching in '77. I quit right after football season, my fourth season, came to Dallas, worked for promotions with Danny. I learned a ton with Danny. We had Palladium, we booked a lot of gigs, and then went my separate way, did some freelance stuff till about 83. Mark got in touch with me, wanted to know would I come look at a show they had going on, kind of evaluate some situation. And it was Stevie Ray Vaughan show at the Bronco Bowl. Well, I went to that, and then Mark got me in the dressing room and said, look, we really need somebody to start handling some production and doing stuff for us. And at the time, I was living with a Delta flight attendant. I didn't need a job. I didn't need the money, I just needed a job. So I said, well, Mark, you got me at a good time. I need a job. So that was in 83, from 83 to 93, 10 years with a lot of shows, a lot of hard work, as Danny said. Linda, I still apologize at some of the early morning calls that Mark would make me call and say we were still trying to wrap things up at sunup at the Bronco Bowl, and he would be home sometime soon. But I got back into education in 2000, and I don't know, it was about several years later, I got a text one day from my 5th grade girlfriend that said she was Mark Lee's mentor in the new AC program. She said, I bet y'all have a lot of stories. And I went, oh man, we do for an educator. Well, I taught until at WGY, I ended up becoming a behavior specialist because I knew a lot about bad behavior. Mark and I always kept in contact, and to hear that he was a teacher and he was in humanities, and I went back into teaching last year, and they recruited me because they thought I would be a good in-house suspension teacher. So my kids, which mainly outlaw outlaws, I tell them, you know, when I'm knocking in dragouts, one of these days you're going to realize I'm the coolest teacher you ever had. And I can say that about Mark and his students. He's the coolest teacher you'll ever have. Thank you for the mission, Mark.
Cool. I want to thank all you guys for being here tonight. We've got one more video clip that I want to show you. And after this is over, feel free to hang out at the bar. We'll be here as long as you're here. Thanks for coming again tonight. Okay? Just a second.